A spark exploded into blinding light. Shadows shrieked and fled. The spirit rose, darker and furious. She is ours. The walls shook. The pot screamed. Ifeyinwa collapsed, shaking, tiny hands dragging her into darkness. A shadow wrapped her neck, lifting her. But to truly understand how this moment came to be, we must return to the very beginning. In the quiet town of Umwogo, people whispered about a woman called Ifeyinwa. She was beautiful, proud, and known for her big dreams. Her dream was to own the finest restaurant in the entire region, a place where everyone, from rich traders to tired travelers, would come to eat. But no matter how hard she worked, her food never seemed special. Customers came once and never returned. Each night, Ifeyinwa sat by her empty tables and cried to the gods. Why won't they taste the sweetness of my hands? She would ask. Her husband, Okafor, always told her, patience is the salt of success. But patience could not pay the rent or fill her pots. One evening, an old woman dressed in black entered the restaurant. Her eyes were red like burning coal, and she carried a small calabash. I have eaten in many places, the woman said, but your food has no spirit. Ifeyinwa's heart sank. Mama, what can I do? The old woman smiled slowly. There is a place, she said, a shrine behind the river of silence. The priest there can give you what you need. Fear and desire wrestled in Ifeyinwa's heart. She had heard of that shrine, it was said to be the resting place of forgotten souls. But that night, she dreamed of her restaurant full of laughing people and shining plates. When she woke up, she had made her choice. Before dawn, she went to the forest path that led to the river of silence. The air was thick, and every tree seemed to whisper her name. When she reached the shrine, she saw strange marks on the walls and a pot boiling though there was no fire. A tall priest with white chalk on his face appeared. I know why you came, he said. You want people to eat your food and never forget the taste. Ifeyinwa nodded, trembling. The priest turned and dipped his hand into a pot beside him. Take this water, he said. It comes from where the spirits bathe. Cook with it, and your food will call men from far and near. Ifeyinwa took the water, her hands shaking. How much do I owe you, great priest? She asked. The man smiled. Nothing but respect. But remember, this water must never touch light. Use it only in your food, and never speak of it to anyone. She agreed quickly and ran home. That night, she cooked a pot of jollof rice with the water. As she stirred, the aroma filled the whole street. People passing by stopped and sniffed the air. Oh! Who is cooking heaven in a pot? They asked. One by one, they came in, paid, and ate until no grain was left. For the first time, Ifeyinwa smiled with pride. The next day, her restaurant overflowed with people. She had to borrow chairs from neighbors. Even those who had sworn never to eat her food again returned with joy. Ifeyinwa's food can wake the dead, they joked. Each word of praise was like music to her ears. Okafor was surprised. What happened, my wife? Did you change the recipe? Ifeyinwa only smiled. Maybe the gods finally remembered me, she said softly. But inside her heart, she knew it wasn't the gods, it was the forbidden water. Weeks turned to months. Ifeyinwa became rich. She bought gold earrings, new clothes, and even a small car. Her restaurant now had a big signboard, Ifeyinwa's Kitchen, Taste and Believe. But strange things began to happen. At night, she sometimes heard whispers from her pots, like voices calling her name. One morning, she found handprints on her kitchen wall, wet and cold as if from invisible guests. Fear crept into her joy, but she told herself it was just her imagination. One evening, a young girl named Adebi came to work in the restaurant as a helper. Adebi was quiet but observant. She noticed that Ifeyinwa never allowed anyone to fetch water from the tap. Every evening, she would sneak behind the restaurant with a black clay pot. Curious, Adeabi followed her one night. To her horror, she saw Ifeyinwa pour dark water from a calabash into the cooking pot while murmuring strange words. Adeabi gasped quietly and ran away, afraid that even the air might be cursed. The next morning, Adeabi avoided her madam's eyes. But guilt made her uneasy. She told her mother, who was known as Mama Nwekego, a woman of strong spirit. Mama Nwekego warned her, "My child, don't meddle in what your eyes cannot understand. But keep your heart pure. The gods fight for the innocent." Still, Adeabi felt disturbed. Each night, she dreamed of shadows dancing around the boiling pot, and a voice whispering, "We are not yet full." As Ifeyinwa's fame spread, she opened another branch in the next town. Wealthy businessmen and politicians came to eat her food. They would say, "There is no taste like Ifeyinwa's." But behind the success, her face grew pale and her eyes darker. The forbidden water demanded use every week, or the food lost its charm. One night, when she tried to skip the ritual, her soup turned sour before morning. The smell was unbearable. Desperate, she ran back to the shrine. The priest was waiting, his eyes glowing faintly in the dark. "You broke the rule," he said. "The water must always be fed." Ifeyinwa fell to her knees. "I'm sorry, great priest. I only wanted to rest one day." The man dipped his hand into the curse pot again. This time, he warned, "The spirits will not be patient. Take this and never forget, they always collect their due." She returned home and poured the new water into her pot, but this time, the water hissed like a living thing. The food cooked faster, the aroma richer, and her customers happier, but inside her, something had begun to die. Okafor noticed the change. His wife no longer slept beside him. Her skin became cold at night, her breath shallow. "Ifeyinwa, what is happening?" he asked. She only said, "It is success, my husband. Success steals sleep." But Okafor knew the truth was deeper. One evening, he followed her secretly and saw her talking to shadows near the back of the restaurant. Terrified, he ran to the village priest, Dibia Nachi, and begged for help. Dibia Nachi listened quietly. "If she has indeed mixed with the spirit of the shrine of the dead, then she carries a curse," he said. "Such power brings sweet wealth but bitter end." Okafor's face turned pale. "What can we do?" The Dibia sighed. "When the spirits are fed with forbidden things, only their hunger can end it." That night, he prepared protective charms for Okafor and warned him not to eat from his wife's pot again. "If you love her, pray for her soul," he said sadly. The next morning, a strange man entered the restaurant. He wore white cloth and had tribal marks shaped like crescent moons. He ordered food and ate silently. When he finished, he called Ifeyinwa. "Your taste is powerful," he said, "but you have fed more than moths. You have fed shadows." Ifeyinwa froze. "Who are you?" she asked. The man smiled sadly. "A messenger of those who eat unseen." Before she could speak, he vanished into thin air, leaving behind a faint smell of incense and fear. That night, thunder roared even though the sky was clear. Ifeyinwa's pot shook violently. One pot cracked, spilling dark liquid onto the floor that turned into a small pool. She screamed as ghostly hands reached from the pool and touched her feet. Then everything went still. She locked the kitchen and ran into her bedroom, trembling. "No," she whispered, "I won't stop. They can't take this from me." But deep inside, she knew the spirits had already claimed their share. The next day, rumors spread that a customer had fallen ill after eating at her restaurant. Then another. The people began to whisper. "Maybe she uses charm," they said. Afraid, she went to Dibia Nachi for help, pretending to seek protection from jealous people. But the Dibia saw through her lies. "Ifeyinwa," he said, "you have touched the water of the shrine of the dead. Unless you confess and cleanse, your pot will soon eat you. She laughed bitterly. Dibia, I am too rich to turn back. At night, Adebi saw her madam talking to herself in the kitchen, her voice changing like two people arguing. One voice was soft and sweet, the other was harsh and echoing. When Ifeyinwa came out, her eyes glowed faintly red. Adebi hid behind the door and began to pray. By morning, the madam was cheerful again, as if nothing had happened. But Adebi packed her things quietly. Before leaving, she whispered, Madam, I thank you, but my spirit no fit stay here anymore. Ifeyinwa just smiled thinly. Go, child. The kitchen doesn't need the fearful. Without Adebi, the restaurant began to lose its warmth. The laughter of customers grew less each day. Ifeyinwa cooked harder, adding more forbidden water, but the spirits were angry now. Each night, she saw faces in her pot, faces of people who had eaten her food. One of them called her name. Ifeyinwa, she screamed, throwing the lid away, but the echo of her name continued, floating through the dark kitchen like wind in a graveyard. Okafor begged her to stop. Please, my wife, let us leave this place. Money is not worth madness. She slapped him in anger. You fool. You think I will lose everything I built? Tears filled his eyes as he packed his bag and left, his heart heavy but his spirit grateful for escape. Alone, Ifeyinwa's shadow grew longer each night. Even the dogs refused to pass behind her restaurant. The air smelled of fear and hidden things. The townspeople began to avoid her. Some said they saw her walking at midnight, holding a pot that dripped black water. Others swore they heard crying from her roof at dawn. She laughed at them, but inside, she felt cracks forming in her mind. One evening, she looked into her mirror and saw not her face but the priest's smiling reflection. You fed them well, he said. Now they are coming to dine with you. The mirror shattered, and the room went dark. That night, lightning flashed without thunder. The ground beneath her restaurant trembled. Her biggest pot began to boil on its own. From it came whispers, cries, and laughter all mixed together. Ifeyinwa fell to her knees and screamed, Leave me. I gave you everything. But the pot cracked open, and the shadows she had fed began to crawl out. When the shadows came out of the pot, they moved like smoke with faces. Ifeyinwa tried to run, but her legs felt like wood. The whispers grew louder, voices of those who had eaten her food, calling her name again and again. Ifeyinwa. Ifeyinwa. Suddenly everything went silent. Then the biggest shadow spoke, We have eaten your sweetness. Now you will taste our hunger. She fainted on the floor, and when she woke, her kitchen was empty, but the pot still boiled though there was no fire. At dawn, neighbors saw thick black smoke rising from her restaurant. They rushed to help, thinking it was fire, but when they entered, the smoke disappeared. The air smelled of strange perfume. Ifeyinwa was found sitting on the floor, laughing and crying at the same time. People said she had gone mad. But after 2 days, she reopened her restaurant as if nothing happened. The customers, though afraid, could not resist the smell of her food. It is charm, they said, but who can resist such taste? So they ate, and the curse continued. Meanwhile, Dibia began to dream of dark rivers and hungry spirits. He knew the time was near. He sent word to Okafor, who was staying with his brother in another town. Your wife's end is close, he said. If you still care for her soul, come before it is too late. Okafor returned with tears in his eyes. He stood outside the restaurant and watched people eat with greedy joy. They don't know, he whispered. They don't know what they are swallowing. That night, he tried to speak to Ifeyinwa. My wife, please, come home. Let us leave this place. She looked at him with eyes that no longer seemed human. Home, she asked. This is my home. My children are here. Okafor looked around in confusion. Which children? He asked. She pointed to the pots. They talk to me. They keep me company. Okafor's heart broke. He ran out and swore he would never return again unless with the Dibia himself. The next morning, strange footprints appeared all over the restaurant floor, footprints of children with no toes. Customers noticed but ignored them because the food smelled too sweet. That night, the shadows danced again. Ifeyinwa was now hearing them even when she walked in daylight. They told her secrets, made her laugh, made her cry. The more she obeyed them, the richer she became. But her skin grew paler each week, and her eyes began to sink like one who never sleeps. One afternoon, a traveling pastor came to eat. He prayed over his food, then stopped suddenly. His eyes widened as if he saw something terrible. "Madam," he said, "the spirits of death walk inside your kitchen." She laughed mockingly. "Pastor, eat or leave my restaurant." The pastor left quietly but sprinkled holy oil near the door. That night, the pot refused to boil. The spirits were angry. "Someone has touched the door with light," they screamed. In rage, they threw plates and spoons until the whole place shook. The next day, Ifeyinwa found all her plates broken and her chairs upside down. She shouted at her workers, accusing them of laziness. One of them, a boy named Chike, ran away that very day, saying he could no longer work where pots talked at night. By evening, only 2 workers remained, and even they planned to leave soon. Still, customers came, drawn by something they couldn't explain. Her food now had a strange sweetness that made people crave it like a drug. One evening, a woman who had eaten from her restaurant collapsed on the road. When they carried her home, she kept muttering, hot pot, until she died before dawn. Fear spread through the village. Some people stopped coming, but others said, "She must have eaten too much. Let us go and see for ourselves." Ifeyinwa only smiled and kept cooking. "Let them talk," she said. "The hungry will always return." Okafor returned with a heart heavy like stone. He came alone at first but later ran out before dawn and returned with Dibia Nachi. "If you don't save her, she will die," Okafor begged. The Dibia entered the kitchen, lifted his staff, and began chanting. The walls trembled and sniffed the air. "This place is soaked in darkness," he murmured. At that moment, the pot in the kitchen began to shake violently, banging against the stove as if something inside wanted to escape. But the pot only laughed. Ifeyinwa grabbed a knife. "Leave my pot alone." The Dibia staff glowed as he raised it, chanting ancient words. With every chant, the pot shook harder but always returned to its place, mocking him. Customers screamed and ran away. Dibia Nachi stepped forward and struck the ground 3 times. Instead of weakening, the darkness grew stronger. The pot rose from the shelf and hovered in the air. A tall shadow appeared, its eyes burning like red coals. A deep, terrible voice. "You are too late, priest," it hissed. The Dibia staggered backward. His staff dimmed. The spirit pushed him with invisible force. He hit the wall so hard he screamed. Sweat poured down his face. "I cannot break this," he whispered. "This is not for my kind." The spirits she fed, they are older than the shrines. Okafor rushed to him, terrified. His voice cracked. "Save her," he shouted. But Nachi shook his head, trembling like a child. "Her soul has gone too far. My power cannot reach her." "Then who can save her?" The Dibia took a shaky breath. "Someone who walks with light stronger than death." Then he fled the restaurant, leaving Okafor alone with the nightmare. That night, the pots refused to stay quiet. Inside the restaurant, Ifeyinwa's laughter echoed strangely. The pot boiled without fire. Shadows crawled along the walls like spiders. Okafor fell to his knees. "My wife, please." She turned slowly. Her eyes were not human anymore. "The children are hungry," she whispered. They want more mouths, more souls. Okafor sobbed helplessly. The children's voices hissed and whispered, "Fire is coming. Fire is coming." Okafor watched her from the doorway and cried silently. This was no longer his wife. Okafor knelt on the floor and cried like a broken man. "God, if you can hear me, anyone, please save my wife." He remembered the traveling pastor who once warned Ifeyinwa. A tiny spark of hope rose inside him. He stood and ran. He ran like a man chased by fire. Just before sunset, Okafor returned, not with a Dibia, but with the pastor. The pastor carried no staff. No beads. Only a small Bible and a bottle of anointing oil. The pastor stepped through the door. As he crossed the threshold, the shadows shrank back, hissing like snakes. When Ifeyinwa saw him, "You again," Ifeyinwa screamed. "Leave. Your light burns them." The pastor opened his Bible. "Let God speak, not I." The pot exploded with a loud crack, not broken, but split open like something was trying to hatch. The pastor didn't flinch. "Ife," he said gently. "You are God's daughter. He has not forgotten you." The pot shook violently. Shadows poured out of the pot, dozens of them, crawling, clawing, whispering Ifeyinwa's name. The pastor lifted his hand. "In the name of the one who made heaven and earth," the biggest shadow lunged at him. The lights went out, darkness swallowed the room. Ifeyinwa screamed. Okafor cried. The pastor's voice rose like thunder, "Let there be light." A single spark ignited in the room, then burst into a blinding glow. The shadows shrieked, curling away like burning paper. The spirit rose again, taller, darker, angrier than before. "You cannot take what belongs to us," it roared. The pastor stepped forward, tears in his eyes. "She was not made for darkness. You have tormented her long enough." The pot screamed. The walls shook as if a storm entered the building. Ifeyinwa sat on the kitchen floor, shaking. Her hair was rough, her eyes swollen. When she closed her eyes, she saw tiny hands pulling her deeper into darkness. Ifeyinwa fell to her knees, holding her head. The biggest shadow wrapped around Ifeyinwa's neck, lifting her off the ground. "She is ours," it roared. The pastor stepped forward, tears streaming. "No soul is beyond mercy." He pressed his palm to her forehead. A scream tore the air. The children's voices screamed inside her skull. "Don't leave us. Don't trust the light. Stay with us." Blood dripped from her nose. She looked at the pastor and whispered, "Save me." The pot thrashed violently. From within it, ghostly faces of customers appeared, the ones who had eaten her food. They cried, they laughed, they pleaded. Okafor shouted, "Fight, my wife. Fight." For the first time in months. Ifeyinwa wept. I don't want to die." A wind ripped through the restaurant. Chairs flew. Windows burst. The pot glowed red like molten iron. The spirit attacked him, but each time it touched him, it burned. "Let her go," the pastor commanded. The pot cracked. A scream escaped from inside it, not human, not child, not spirit, something in between. The pastor's voice strengthened. "Spirit of darkness, by the blood of Jesus, by the mercy of the Almighty God, lose your hold." The shadow cracked like dry wood. Light burst from Ifeyinwa's chest. The spirit shrieked, a scream that shook the entire building. With one final blast of light, it shattered into dust. The pastor poured the anointing oil on the pot. Boom! The pot shattered into pieces. A horrible, ear-splitting cry echoed into the night. The pot stopped boiling. The shadows vanished. A black smoke rushed out and vanished like a dying shadow. Ifeyinwa collapsed in Okafor's arms, trembling like a child. She was free. The pastor fell to his knees, exhausted. "It is finished." For 3 days, Ifeyinwa did not wake. Though, she breathed, but barely. Okafor stayed beside her night and day, until the fourth morning, she opened her eyes. Sunlight touched her face gently. She looked around weakly. Where am I? Okafor held her hand, crying with relief. You are home, my wife. She burst into tears, real tears, not the cold, empty ones. My husband, forgive me. Okafor broke down crying and held her gently. I am sorry, she whispered over and over. Okafor kissed her forehead. All that matters is that you are back. Healing weeks passed. Ifeyinwa regained her strength, slowly. The pastor said, the shattered pot must be buried in holy ground. But not by us, by the one who carried its curse. Ifeyinwa nodded. With trembling hands, she carried the pot outside. It was heavier than ever. The pastor led, Okafor followed. They buried it beside the old, abandoned chapel. As soil covered it, a soft wind blew, like a sigh of release. She gathered the villagers and told her story openly, weeping as she shared how greed almost destroyed her. She confessed everything, the shrine, the pot, the voices, the curse. The priest. The water. The bargain she didn't understand. The whispers. The shadows hungry for souls. The villagers listened in silence. They gasped. Some ran. Some cried. Some wept. Some trembled. Some left afraid of what they had eaten. Others prayed. But the pastor placed a hand on her back. This is not shame, he said. This is deliverance. The village forgave her, slowly, but sincerely. Ifeyinwa began attending church every morning. Her skin brightened. Her eyes regained life. Her laughter became her own again for the first time in months. She slept peacefully. People who once feared her now saw her strength. Women learned from her story. Men respected her honesty. The pastor visited often, checking on her like a father. One quiet evening, Ifeyinwa sat outside her small home watching the sunset. Her husband sat beside her. Do you ever think of the pot? He asked softly. She breathed deeply. No, she said. I only think of the God who saved me. She leaned her head on his shoulder. In the distance, a church bell rang. The wind blew gently, warm and harmless. The past no longer called her name. Ifeyinwa smiled, truly, peacefully, finally free. Months passed. One morning, she woke with a new idea. I will reopen my restaurant, she said softly. Okafor looked at her in surprise. Are you sure? Yes, she smiled. But this time, with God, not spirits. She started in her first restaurant and abandoned the new branch she acquired with wealth from negative spiritual powers. She cleaned the entire place, threw away all broken plates, and burned every old cloth connected to the curse. But one evening, she cooked a simple pot of rice with her husband beside her. No whispers. No shadows. Only peace. She looked at the sunset and then looked up at her husband with tears in her eyes and whispered, "This is my second chance." He smiled. Yes. And you will use it well? People feared at first. But the pastor prayed over the door. He blessed every pot, every spoon, every table. When the first customer tasted her food, he smiled. This tastes pure. Soon, the restaurant was full again, not because of charm, but because of genuine flavor. Word spread. People came from neighboring towns just to eat her food. This time, her wealth grew cleanly. She destroyed her new branch and rebuilt it from the ground up. The blessed restaurant she reopened with a new name, Grace Kitchen. No shadows. No strange footprints. The pastor visited and prayed at the entrance of the Grace Kitchen and gave her more words of encouragement. No whispering children. Her joy returned completely. She hired Check back, the boy who ran away, and he laughed, "Madam, this place is bright now. Months later, the pastor visited her on a calm evening. God has been good to you, he said. Ifeyinwa nodded, tears in her eyes. She said, I thought I lost everything, but giving my life to God gave me back more than before. Children played outside. The restaurant glowed warmly. Okafor hugged her from behind. And she said, my new story. My freedom. And the curse pot, once her prison, remained broken forever. Years later, mothers told their children the story of the girl who almost lost her life because she fed success with darkness, and how mercy saved her. Ifeyinwa walked gently, helped the poor, and warned every young woman never to seek shortcuts. And every time she prayed, she thanked God for giving her a second chance. The story of Ifeyinwa became the tears, the wisdom of generations, the warning: greed feeds spirits. Contentment feeds life. But most of all, it became a story of grace, redemption, and a woman who came back from the edge because someone chose to fight for her soul. If this story touched you, please like, share with someone who needs it, and subscribe for more powerful stories like this one. What part of the story moved you the most? Comment below.